Evening. Welcome. Welcome to Asia Society Hong Kong Center, and I am so delighted as president of Asia Society Hong Kong to welcome all of you to tonight's really celebration of Australia. And I want to first of all really thank the Consul General for those lovely Australian wines. Isn't it wonderful? Thank you so much. And those of you who know our rules, we generally do not have allowed drinks in the Miller Theater, but in this Jockey Club Hall, drinks are allowed. So those of you who are interested, you have a few minutes to top off your wine or other beverages before the film starts. So feel free, because there's a reason why tonight is a celebration. I see a few of you. Good. Please, top it up. And tonight's program, I think I am so looking forward to. In fact, I changed my flight. I was supposed to fly out last night to go to the States, midnight flight, but I changed it by 24 hours because I am so delighted that we have this opportunity that I can be here. The program is already long scheduled, and our speaker, Michelle Garnaut, who needs no introduction. Many of you here are friends. And also, I'm really I'm so delighted I had a chance to meet the filmmaker, Luo Tang, and I've convinced her that some of her films will be premiering or showing here at Asia Society in the near future. So Luo Tang, thank you, welcome. And Karen, old friend of Asia Society. Karen, thank you for moderating tonight's post-screening talk. And also, of course, I really need to, this program would not be possible without the support of Mr. Gareth William, Austria's Consul General. And Gareth will come up after me to make an opening remark. Tonight's program is supported by the Australian Consul General in Hong Kong and also the National Foundation for Australia-China Relations. And we are really grateful for their support. And I think, I don't know if you guys know, I think maybe in my newsletter I mentioned it, that this program is part of Season of Australia for Asia Society. And Season of Australia was started because we have a wonderful exhibition in New York right now, Matahin, 8 Decades of Aboriginal Australian Bark Painting from Yirrkala. And the exhibition opened mid-September. I had a chance to see the preview of it when I was in New York. And those of you who have a chance to be in New York between now and January 5th, I would really encourage you to see this exhibition that has never been before shown at an institution like Asia Society or in New York. And New York Times recently just called it the exhibition ravishing. And so with that in mind, Asia Society, the Season of Australia has come into being. So before January 5th, before Season of Australia ends, there's kind of a friendly competition among all the centers to come up with our myriads or Season of Australia programming, anything related to Australia. And the month of October, we already had a chancellor or RMIT. Some of you were with us when he was here speaking about educational opportunity, our RMIT. And we also screened a CNN documentary on Australia's recent natural disasters. And that was really well received. So tonight is part of that program. And also stay tuned. There will be more Season of Australia program before the exhibition in New York closes in early January. So I would encourage you, and also ideas. In fact, I just seeing some of you here, I think Suhanya Hori agreed. There are a lot of Australians here making contribution in the arts and NGO. And Fiona, I see a few of you. And I would love to wrap up the Season of Australia with a panel talking about why many of the Australians are here working in Hong Kong and contributing to Hong Kong's wonderful ecosystem, arts and culture, as well as kind of like, Michelle has set the bar really high, but because of her, I have to say my own connection, I arrived in Hong Kong in 1992 as a young executive. And the restaurant we all talked about and everybody wanted to take me to, but some of us couldn't afford to because I was working for state government, was M on the Fringe. So when I finally did make it to M on the Fringe, I was, it's everything everybody said it was. So Michelle is a legend. Here in Hong Kong, and not just in Hong Kong. I think this film will show is also a legend in Greater China, Beijing, Shanghai, and also many of the stuff that she started, the Lit Fest, festivals. I have to say, we've been kind of copying that. So, Michelle, thank you for your contribution. And just show a hand. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have been to any of Michelle's restaurants, either in Beijing, Shanghai, or Hong Kong? I think I see a full house, okay? So those of us, we know, we're among friends, you guys. And also, also show of a hand, how many Australians are here tonight? Oh, great. We have about 40%. Great. So if after Gareth's remark, we're going to do a group photo. I want to show New York and all the Asia societies how wonderful our season of Australia, because I'm kind of competitive that way with our other centers. So please, the photographer will come up and take a group photo so that we can document tonight's celebration. So with that, I really, again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for all your support. Asia Society Hong Kong would not be here without you all. And really, I look at Michelle's bio. We were established, kind of around the same time. We were established in 1990, and we've been here now over 30 years. And it's the programming and the support's getting stronger and stronger. So we really appreciate. And again, thank you all. And I'm on this right now. I'm really delighted to introduce Australian Consul General, Mr. Gareth William, who's going to make opening remark before the film starts. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Alice. It's great to be here at as I understand it, the Asia premiere of the documentary, so that's very exciting. At any time, we estimate there are around 1 million Australians living overseas, and they're doing amazing things all around the world, many here in Hong Kong. In fact, we estimate around 100,000 Australians living in Hong Kong, which is one of our largest communities overseas. But out of those 1 million Australians living overseas, I think you'll agree there is only one Michelle Garnaut. I have to admit I haven't been to any of the M restaurants. I hadn't had that opportunity. I have to admit it. I know, I have to admit. Which is a great shame, because I have seen the photos of the food and it looks absolutely amazing, and I'm very jealous of all of you who put your hands up earlier that have had the opportunity to go to the restaurants. But I have had the privilege of meeting Michelle before and learning from her about her experiences and the contributions that she's made. A real trailblazer in Hong Kong, in China, and really set a pace and a standard that others have followed in impressive ways. I heard this evening that M at the Fringe 35 years ago was one of the first, if not the first, standalone Western restaurant in Hong Kong, which is, well, we can claim it, that's okay. But either way, it was an amazing precedent and a great contribution to Hong Kong, where the M brand started, and then expanded into Shanghai with M on the Bund, which was opened about 25 years ago. And what an amazing restaurant it was. So in 2018, Michelle was recognised for her contributions with one of our highest honours in Australia, the Order of Australia. And yeah. And the citation is quite impressive. I think it really makes the point that Michelle's contribution wasn't just about food, that it was about culture, it was about changing society, and it was about creating an inclusive environment. So the citation is for her distinguished service to Australia-China relations as a restaurateur and entrepreneur, to the promotion of Australian food, film and design, as a supporter of literary and cultural programs, and as a role model. That is an incredible citation. So it's no surprise. It's no surprise that that this documentary has been made to recognise that contribution, because it does go to the story of the relationship between Australia and China, to the exchange of cultural ideas, to the way that food can bring people together, and the way that her restaurants created a space of inclusivity, whether that be for the art community, for people from different backgrounds, including the LGBTI community, which was really important for Shanghai, and for doing business and for doing business deals. So it's an incredible legacy that she leaves behind. I'd like to congratulate everyone involved in the production, including director Luo Tang, who we have here this evening, which is fantastic, and another great Australian member of the expat community, Karen, will be moderating the discussion later. So just another one of our great compatriots here in Hong Kong, making an important contribution in the media space. So it's just a real privilege to be here to be part of this. I want to acknowledge that it's been supported by the Australia, I used to work there, I should know, the National Foundation for Australia-China Relations, which is supporting cultural connections and other engagements between Australia, China, including Hong Kong. And I'm really looking forward to an exciting movie. I hope everyone's eaten, because I'm sure we'll be seeing lots of delicious food. So I hope people don't go too hungry, but do enjoy a drink in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Did you like the film? I think we can all agree it was a love letter to M on the Bund, but also a love letter to Shanghai, and just a great summary of everything you've done. I mean, Michelle, you've done so much. I'm
exhausted.
Beyond. It's beyond. So it's so fantastic we can have Michelle here today, and also LT. And first of all, Michelle, this is the first time you've actually seen the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what did you think?
Yeah, it's great. I was really happy they took one really nasty line out of it.
Can you tell us what that was?
Well, it was taken out of context. It was in one of the trailers. I think you probably all saw the trailers. But it was taken out of context because basically I'm standing at that last literary festival, no, the last chamber music concert. Yeah, the last concert, and there's all these people sitting in the room, and somebody must have said something to me beforehand, and they were like, "Who are you?" And I said, "Honestly, if you don't know who I am by now, you've been living under a fucking rock." But that was taken entirely out of context and just in one of the trailers, and I said, "Oh God, I sound so arrogant and horrible." So I made her take it out.
Well, there's a lot of great stuff that's in there.
That was about the only thing I made her take out.
But that's still in the trailer. So
It's
if you
still in
want
the
to watch
trailer.
it.
Trailers.
Yes. So, Luo, we call Luo LT, so I'm going to call you LT. Can you tell us, I'm going to try and save Michelle's voice a bit because she has quite a bad cough. Tell us how this all came about. Because when we had a call earlier this week, Michelle basically said, I wanted to do a 5 to 10 minute video for some memories, and here we are 1.5 hours later. So, LT, how did it come about?
Michelle, before she announced publicly that she was going to close the restaurant, she texted me. She said, I wanted to tell you this in person, that I'm closing the restaurant. And I was like, what? Everyone's reaction was exactly like mine. So she said, I wanted to make like 5 to 10 minutes video, and give me a budget. You make videos, you make documentaries. So I went in to have a talk with her, and then of course at the restaurant, everything, all the previous memories of my own came to my heart, brain, mind, and I was like, maybe let's not talk about, like the length of the video, the film, how long it's going to be. Just give me access and let me film it. I can try to capture some interesting stories. The next 2 months that the restaurant is still open, can I film? And she says, okay, you can have all the access and our piles of archive photos and videos. You can use all of them. It was like, okay, wow, that's great. So in the next few weeks, she kept asking me, where's the budget? Can you send me a budget? And I kept just putting it off. And during that time, I already thought maybe there was a seed there somewhere in my head that I wanted to make it a longer form, but I didn't know what it was going to be yet. So I just said, don't worry about the budget, and let's see where it's going to. And then very quickly, after a few weeks, and we were already in line, like it's going to be a much longer form than 5 minutes. And I think I made it very clear that Michelle, you can't be involved in any of the creative decision because you're the subject. It would be very strange that if you are either financially or creatively involved in the filmmaking. And we kind of agreed, so my crew had the whole freedom to film the way we wanted to.
And she didn't meddle?
No, not at all.
I didn't really meddle, did I? No.
So, LT, as you discovered archive footage, photos, all this history, what did you think? Did you know all this about Michelle, all the history that was behind everything that she did?
No, I didn't know this much. To me, she was a very bossy boss of a restaurant. she told people off all the time. Like, she didn't really care guests, so she didn't care whether it would affect business or not. It's just the way she was. And the fact that her staff had stayed so long, almost all of them worked there for more than 15, 20, 23 years. That's amazing in F&B industry. It's just very rare to see, a story like this happen in my part of the world, really.
Yeah. Okay, Michelle, so LT just called you the bossy boss. One thing that Gareth said earlier, which I think is really interesting, is that if you do go back to your days here in Hong Kong, M at the Fringe, and then M on the Bund, you created a brand before anyone talked about brands, especially in the restaurant business. I mean, now everybody talks about this is our brand, this is our concept, etc. But you had it all perfect from when you started. I remember going to M at the Fringe. It was sophisticated, but it wasn't stuffy. The food was fantastic. It was always consistent. It was the first place you could get pavlova in the 1990s. And the atmosphere was amazing. It was whatever you needed it to be, whether you were on a big night out or you were just having a casual dinner. And that doesn't happen by accident. So how did you make it happen? Was it being the boss woman and saying, this is exactly how it's going to be? Were you a bit of a control freak?
Total. I was total control freak. I've said to other people, I was born bossy. I'm the oldest of 9 children, and I've got friends and family and nieces and other people here who will totally attest to how bossy I am. But as I said to customers sometimes, if I wasn't bossy, you would be sitting here. So that's the price that you pay. I don't think, I suppose I had a strong idea of what I thought a good restaurant was. I mean, I also wasn't really young. I was telling, my gang came down from Shanghai to help. So Carrie and Jane and Audrey and Carrie's poor husband Lou, who got dragged down, they all came down to help us in the Fringe over these few days. I was saying this morning that when I turned 30, I went to Italy. My sister was studying Italian, and I went to Italy to do a couple of months of Italian. And I spent the whole time every weekend meeting my boyfriend crying and screaming, like, thinking, oh, I'm never going to finish anything in my life. I'm never going to do anything. And I often tell this to young people who sort of say, oh, I just don't know, where's my passion? It's like, well, it took me quite a long time. So I think that for me, I had a very determined, very strong idea of what a good restaurant was in 1989, and I didn't feel there was the type of restaurant. There were lots of good restaurants, actually. There were lots of good restaurants. But I didn't feel that there was a type of place I wanted to go to or I would feel comfortable. And so for me, I wanted to take sort of, bring about the type of place that I wanted to go to. And it turns out lots of other people, wanted to go there too, which is just as well. Yeah.
Exactly. But you must have definitely had a degree
Sorry, I got such a cough.
That's okay. A degree of confidence that you could pull it off.
No way, I had no confidence. Annabelle Zimmern, who many of you will know, sat me down the day before. She walked in, she was helping me do things. Paula Dindo, who painted the walls. I mean, you ask other people. Paula didn't get asked when we were doing this documentary, partly because it was all in SARS. I don't know if in COVID, you sort of all worked that out. This was made between the end of December to February 2021 to 22. So this was thick in the middle of the COVID. So there's nobody coming in or out. And yeah, so, but I think, Annabelle sat me down the day before and she walked in and I was crying, sitting there. I said, this is never going to work, it's never going to work. The walls are pink. I mean, who's going to come to play pink walls and stupid bloody chairs? People fall off them and, oh my God, it's never going to work. And everybody said, she said, pull yourself together. That's enough of that. Just stop that. Okay, got up and, that we were really busy. And I think it's about being in the right place at the right time. And I think that's very much what I've been lucky, really. And I mean that when I say that. I've had a little bit of luck. I've had a lot of luck. And then the rest of it's a lot of hard work. And you can have all the luck you like. And tons of people say to me, you're so lucky. And I say, yeah, well, a little bit. But you've still got to put all the hard work in. If you don't put the hard work in, nothing works. And you've got to keep putting the hard work in. Right until the last day, there. It was great fun, but it was hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that LT just mentioned, which really is remarkable, is how long so many of your staff worked for you. I mean, that in the F&B industry is very unusual.
Well, I think it's not rocket science. I mean, basically, my policy from the beginning was people should be able to have their own lives. You should not expect them to work themselves to death. I mean, I worked for lots of maybe not very nice bosses, let's just put it that way, where I sort of was working 90 or 100 hours a week, and I'm not exaggerating, that's all right. You can be at work at 6 in the morning. We have to get up at 4 to get there. And then you go home and you get home at 11 and you have a few hours sleep. You get out of bed, you go back to work. And, part of that when you're young in the catering world is sort of like this drive to just keep going. I can work for 48 hours non-stop because we've got a ball on or something, It's just like lunacy. And it's a bit sort of macho also. But I think that you can't do that for very long. So for me it was like, well, when we have to work hard, we have to work hard. But actually take some time for yourself. And so everybody worked a 5-day week. Most people worked 42 hours a week in China. We were probably the first restaurant in Hong Kong to bring in a 5-day working week. So people stayed, they have their own life. And if things are really good, you pay them well and share the profit. And if they're not, you still have to give them a bonus, otherwise they leave. So you sort of have to deal with it. I don't think it's really rocket science. And I think it's also just about respecting people you work with, and of course, we must have had thousands and thousands. Where's Carrie? She did all of every single interview. Where is Carrie? Is she here? Oh, she's right at the back. that Carrie Liu, she was the first person I employed in China, and she's still here this weekend helping us at the Fringe Club. And I really want to, I'm going to take this really quick opportunity. Jane, thank you. Carrie, thank you. Lou, thank you. Chi Ying, where are you? Chi Ying's worked longer than all of them. Chi Ying, thank you, has worked with me in Hong Kong since 1990 or 91. Elena, who worked with us from the day we opened, is somewhere down there. And there's so many people I need to thank, but I really do need to thank Michael Nock, because he was the first one who sort of said, all right, he made it tough for me, but he said, I'll put money behind you, you go out there and find it. I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. But taught me a lot. He said he taught me too well, because then I got, I was a bit of a smart ass and figured him out. That's given me an opportunity to say those thank yous. I have so many people to thank, and I have been so lucky. I really have. But, that's also been a lot of hard work for everybody else.
Yeah. But I think you also managed to, as we saw from all the guests' interviews and guest testimonies. By the way, did anyone see themselves in the film? Yes?
I think
or friends?
People.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more a Shanghai crowd, especially at the end. But yeah, I think there's quite a few people.
Yeah, but I think the other amazing thing about your restaurants is that you were often there, and you met a lot of people, but you remembered people. You actually remember people's faces.
Remember the nice ones.
Okay, people's names. I must have been nice because you remembered me, but that also is just quite rare, because you think about the number of people that you would meet, and the mind boggles, and you made it so that everybody felt so personally welcome.
Sometimes it's really horrible. People would say, I was at your restaurant when it opened. I say, good, that's nice. We've never seen you since. Until it's closing. And they would say, well, I've been busy. I'm like, yeah, well, so have we. So sometimes it's a real bitch.
A couple of things that came out in the film that I wanted to talk more about was, you've always been very supportive of women. Was that a very conscious thing? Was that a priority for you?
Of course. Mm-hmm. Women need more support. Yeah. They've got more disadvantages. Better clap too, boys, otherwise you'll be in trouble tonight.
And did you find, because some of the things that you did to support women you were doing way before many organizations were doing, did you ever get any pushback on that?
You mean the mentor walks?
Mentor walks, and just hiring, the member of staff who was trans.
Actually, I didn't hire Lizzie. We love Lizzie. She's fantastic. I worked with lots of gay people and lesbians and lots of different people. And when I came back, it was just when I came back from in COVID, I think Matthew said, I think I better tell you that we've employed Lizzie. I said, okay, great, it's fine. And he said, well, there's two problems. I said, yeah. He said, well, one, she's the chef's girlfriend. I said, okay. I don't mind. And two, she's transgender. And I said, yeah, why is that a problem? It's not a problem, I don't care. Does anybody else care? And he said, well, most people are fine with it. I said, well, the ones who are not fine with it, it's their problem. But just make sure it's not a problem for her. That's how I felt about it. And honestly, most people just really had no opinion. I mean, Lizzie was very obviously trans. But most people just didn't really have very much of an opinion about it, including the staff. Yes? Yeah, most people were absolutely fine. I think China, the big impression overall is extremely intolerant, and yes, it's definitely not the same place it was. But I think people generally, one of the things I like about China, they don't really care what you do. Like, you're not in there, they haven't got an opinion about you unless you're there, you're in their space. Then they might have an opinion about you. But people just live and let live and be and let be. And that's one of the things that I really like. They're not judgmental, no.
Yeah.
Unless, I suppose, you're their daughter-in-law or something. They've probably got a lot of things to say. But yeah.
Another thing that I wanted you touched on briefly in the film was, of course, your foray into Beijing and how different it was. Can you go into that a bit more? What did you mean
Difficult.
by difficult and different?
Yeah. I mean, Beijing was difficult because it's a really different city. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have had this experience, but you go to another place and you think, oh, you know, we've got this product and you'd have to adapt it a bit, but it's completely different city. And even though I knew Beijing sort of relatively well and knew lots of people, I didn't really know what the operational environment. Beijing's a city for the government. It's government relations, government people. You know, there's diplomats and there's government people. And that's basically it. And there was a super interesting sort of artistic community. And it was a really interesting place to live, but it was a really hard place to work. I think it's a much more transient place than Shanghai, which I know might sound strange. But didn't know very many people who were from Beijing. Our staff by the end was nearly all Shanghainese, nearly all from Shanghai. So it was just a much more difficult place to get a handle on. And we were also in we were, on Tiananmen Square looking at the gates, looking at the big Arrow Tower and the Tiananmen Tower. But, that's great, but it was impossible to get there. And we were on a building site. It's still a building site, actually. And we signed that lease in 2007. Our landlords were really difficult. That sort of made it really impossible. And that's the great irony of that, is that the other landlords we had were government people, really, and that this was private company, and they were the pain in the ass. So, it's sort of interesting how... So Beijing was just tough. And as I said there, we really spent way too much money on it. And it could never really pay for itself. It just never really stood a chance. Never made any money. And, just used to say, okay, let's just try to minimize the losses, because we were stuck with the lease for 8 years. I couldn't get out of it.
So you did the whole, basically you did the whole 8
years. We
years.
did the whole 8 years because I couldn't get out of the lease. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. So that was hard work. But
it's a good lesson.
You'll live and
right?
learn. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you think about the other longevity that you've had both in Hong Kong with them at the Fringe and then Shanghai, 23 years, that's again very rare in the restaurant business to have a single venue.
I think it is like in Hong Kong and in
Hong Kong
Shanghai and these places, but that's because the rents are so crazy.
Yes.
I mean, we paid crazy rent on the Bund. And then they wanted to put the rent up. So to sign another 5 years, I had to pay an increase in rent.
And
in COVID, when there was, nobody could get off an aeroplane and come.
In those early years, as you were growing, was the rent also going up all the time? Or is it as you got successful?
Our first landlord, actually the lady at the end, Susan Zhang, Madam Zhang, she was the most formidable person I'd ever met, until I signed the lease with her, until she found that I was 3 days older than her and that we were actually sisters. She decided that we were both monkeys. We were both roosters. I was born on the first day of the year of the rooster, and she was born on the third day of the year of the rooster, and therefore she was born in Shanghai, I was born in Melbourne, but we were sisters. And then from there, sort of like, okay, we can have the lease. Before that, it was like, no, I don't think so. So, and she was there at the end. She's the lady
who talked about the parking ticket.
She's the lady who talked about the parking ticket.
So she was your landlord?
She was our landlord.
Okay.
First, she was the first go round. And the other lady, Vivian, who was there, is actually Carrie's best friend. So, it was really interesting. There they were at the party at the end and having fun. And, so I think it was, they had sort of sublet the building from the Shanghai Shipping Company, but that all went belly up. I won't go into that, but it was a disaster. Excuse me. And then the Shanghai Shipping Company, when it all went wrong, the Shanghai Shipping Company basically interfered and took the building over, and they were our landlord again. They were our landlord for 15 years, and we had fixed tenancy. So right at the beginning, I think we had the whole glam space for free. I think we didn't pay for it, and we didn't pay for the terrace at the beginning. You know, they didn't think the terrace was worth anything. But we paid, you know, so we paid different levels of rent, but that all got evened out over time, of course. And yeah, it was indexed to the sort of CPI in Shanghai. You know, basically there was a method for calculating the raise in rents, and that was what they did. And then they sublet the building again in 2012, and we had new sort of sub-landlords. They were difficult, you know, they were not easy. And they were the ones who only had 5 years left on their tenancy. So that was why they said you have to commit to 5 years, because they would not have been able to find anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated.
It was very complicated. But that's business in China. It's complicated. Business everywhere is complicated.
What about in Hong Kong?
Well, in Hong Kong, we had the Fringe Club, and it's so funny that there we are back at the Fringe Club now, this weekend. In case you don't know, we're doing a sale of every last thing that's left in the Fringe Club, and we're in the dairy farm, the dairy building on the ground floor, but it's below where our restaurant used to be. And the only reason we're there is because of all the people who we dealt with. The big bosses are no longer there. That wasn't easy. But Yvonne is still there. She started as an intern in about, I don't know, what,
90s?
No, in the late
80s.
80s or something. And she's still there, and she now makes the decisions. So I said, Yvonne, can I have the space? She said, yeah, okay. So that's sort of really funny. But we were at the Fringe Club for 20 years until they had a renovation program in place. And then they said you have to move out for 6 months or 12 months. And then you can come back, and you're going to lose your toilets, and you're going to lose that area, and you're going to do this, and and I was like, I said, what am I supposed to do with the staff for 6 or 12 months? And they were like, well, that's your problem. And I thought, this just doesn't make any sense, you know. So right until we closed on the 31st of December, 2009. And on the 30th of December, it finally came. You know, there was still this tenterhook sort of situation where maybe you can keep operating for another 6 months or 12 months, maybe. And then I just, was like, forget it. It's all too much. And by then we'd announced we were closing, and everybody had been crying for 5 months. We're
still crying. We're still crying, Michelle.
Yeah, but I don't have too many tears left at the end, because I have to tell you, by the time I'd been through all these places closing and all these people crying, I was like, you don't understand, and we got married there, and that happened there, and that happened there, and it was like, great. In the beginning, I cried with everybody, and then I thought I'm going to be exhausted if I keep crying with everybody.
Exactly. I want to talk a bit about this whole concept of the cultural space. And was that, again, something you really wanted and planned from the beginning? I mean, you have a love of literature, you have a love of music. Was that like, I can do more than a restaurant? I can actually make this a place where people can...
Well, that was our tagline in the end, more than just a restaurant. I think that we had the space, and the first thing that we had in that space is I gave it to other people to use. And then there's an Italian guy called David Quadrio, and he set up something called, I think it was called Art Hub. And he came and said, I want to set up this thing, and it's a sort of not-for-profit enterprise. And I said, well, we've got all that empty space out there. You can have it. Paint it, put some lights up. You can have it. And he was there for maybe 6 months or something like that. And then we decided that we would do an Italian restaurant. See, and you think that there haven't been failures. Who remembers Rollo di Polo? Yeah, see, hardly anybody. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, some people remember Rollo di Polo. People say, everything you've touched has turned to gold. And I said, well, not quite. And one of my brothers said when when the Roller de Polo, we announced it was closing, I was like, oh, it's a disaster. And he said, the Golden Girl finally fucked up. I was like, well, yeah, she did. Anyway, we changed that into the Glamour Bar and Glamour Room. And it's true that when I say at that last interview that I did with the FCC in Shanghai, that space never, ever made any money. So it sort of washed its face but it never really made any money. I mean, M on the Bund was the golden goose. And that was...
But you were okay with that?
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, but of course...
But I think in many ways it's sort of like, well, you're never going to be able to do a restaurant that's successful, that competes. We talked about Thai and we talked about all different sorts of things. I mean, we did Italian casual, which was sort of way before its time at the time, and people said it's too cheap. Yeah, really. They would queue up to go to M on the Bun to pay 3 times the price. And I'd say, but this is really just as good as from the... No, we want to go to M on the Bun. It's like, okay.
Very, very interesting. So let's kind of fast forward a bit. That recognition in 2022 that it might be over. How did that all come about?
Well, I think, I really knew, and Michael Knock, and, who was on the board, we've sort of still got some sort of board, I suppose, Josephine Price, we talked about it. Michael and I especially talked about it. I mean, I knew it, and I said, I'm not making a decision until really the last minute. I'll make a decision then, because who knows what will ever happen. You never know. And so, I think by September, Carrie knew. Carrie's the only person who knew the whole story. I think by about, August, September, I thought, that's it. It's done.
Was Shanghai still in lockdown then?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I thought it's done. And at that point, people were sort of saying, oh, it's going to be 2025 before Shanghai opens properly. It's just, they're never going to ever let anybody into Shanghai again. It's like, okay. So I just thought, right, this is done. And the best way to do it is to be really, really prepared. And thank God I had Carrie because, she did 3/4 of the hard work. But, I then thought, okay, we're going to make an announcement and we're going to make it at, I probably would have made it a month earlier and had 3 months, but I was really pissing around with this young couple who wanted to take the space and wanted to turn it into a private club and all this sort of stuff, tried to compromise between landlords, and it just didn't work. And I thought, clean break, that's just it. And so I think by the time it was announced, it was really hard with the staff. They literally found out like at 3:00 that day, I think. And the senior team found out the day before, and then all the staff was, sat down and we're closing and we're announcing it at 5:00 and it was 3:00. And I thought it has to be like that, otherwise it's all going to get out, and so that's what happened. And so I'd had plenty of time to prepare for this. I mean, for other people it wasn't so easy.
When you look back, Michelle, this is the classic question, would you have done anything differently of your career?
Probably not. Probably not. I think you do things and then you learn, along the way. And yeah, not really. I think I've been really sort of lucky, and I think when you're doing something, and even doing these sales we did last weekend in Shanghai for like 5 days, and then at the Fringe, that's just, you need this energy to do a project. And that's sort of been quite fun to have that. I'm exhausted, but it's been fun to have that energy, because actually you think, what are you going to do? Sit around and play canasta all day? I mean, I don't think so.
Watch YouTube.
That's never been my way. So I think that there is energy that comes from energy. And that's, the literary festivals got bigger, but it's also other people's energy. It's not just mine. I mean, there were other people who became energized about doing things, and then they wanted to do it, and then I'd say, well, you do it. And they'd say, oh, no, you have to you have to make it all happen. We'll do anything to help you.
Right,
You
right.
know, so, yeah.
But I think it's wonderful that some of the things you did start, like mentor walks, are still going and have been brought to Hong Kong, right? And the literary festival is also here in Hong Kong.
Well, I didn't start Literary Festival in Hong Kong. Just, let's be clear, the other people started Literary Festival. And that's been, I think it's 25 years next year, maybe, or the year after. I think it's 2026. It's, well, it was going in 23, in 2003, because it's when Frank Morehouse came. I guess they probably started in 2000 or 99 maybe. Anyway, it was actually people at the consulate in Hong Kong who said they heard that I'd invited Frank Morehouse, who was a friend of friends of mine. He's a well-known writer. And they said, why don't you have him, fly to Shanghai? And I said, okay. And they heard that he was coming, and they said, well, can he stop in Hong Kong? And I said, well, I don't know, you ask him. I said, but, I'm not paying for his airfare for him to stop in Hong Kong. You can pay half his airfare, and you pay all those expenses, and then that'll all be fine. And that was what happened. And then we had collaborations, really, really pretty much every year. We always had fantastic, really, prominent Australian writers, New Zealand writers, but we worked with lots of countries. So we worked with lots of consulates and embassies. We were supported by lots of different people's schools. So, that's what made it all possible.
Yeah.
And that was, it's a lot of people, a lot of energy. Yeah, but it was good.
So you were in Shanghai recently.
I was last
right?
weekend.
Have you been back to the space?
We only went back once. And we went because I said, come on, we let's go and do some filming. So I hadn't been back. So a couple of us walked in very indiscreetly with a cameraman and a sound guy, or the boomer thing, on it. And we were all ready to hate it. We were like, oh, we're going to hate it. We're just going to hate it. And we walked in, they were so sweet. They were like, hello, oh, you're from Em on the Bund. So many people tell us about you. Thank you so much. They were so sweet. What could we do? But they actually have a whole pile of film of that, but they didn't use it. Because I said, okay, I've got nothing to say except this.
What's actually there now? A restaurant?
There's a restaurant with lots of private rooms. And apparently the terrace is all blue now, is it? I just saw somebody sent me a photograph the other day. Andrew Bull sent me a photo. And there was some disco going on the terrace.
Oh.
It's all blue lights. I thought, well, there you are. So, good luck to them.
Yeah.
I think the whole Bund has changed quite a lot though, really. Yeah.
What is it becoming now, do you
Well,
think?
there's still a lot of, it's still packed.
Yeah.
There's always been a lot of people down on the Bund. But, when we opened, the cognoscenti of Shanghai said, nobody will ever go to the Bund. And it was like, okay. And then other people said, but there are, hundreds of thousands of people a day who go to the Bund. It's like, there are, but they're not our customers, so. But, it was sort of like a jewel waiting to happen, And it was when I really walked in and saw that what was actually a broken roof, and that all that glass wall was a wall, literally, with one dirty little window and a tiny little door, and this broken, cracks and, weeds growing through it. But there was that whole skyline in front of you, and it was the whole river and the sweep of the river, and then the whole of the sort of historic Bund. I thought, oh my God, this is just, how can you not be impressed by that?
Yeah.
And those, Ben Wood did Xintiandi. Many of you will know Xintiandi in Shanghai. They all said to me, no, this is it, do it here.
Well,
But most people thought we were crazy.
It's the crazy ones who...
Few people said it to my face, most people said it behind my back. And of course I didn't speak Chinese either. I personally always thought that was a bit of an advantage.
To not speak Chinese.
Yeah. Because Carrie's extremely polite, and I would be saying, and she'd say, well, I think she would like to say very politely.
Carrie was the politeness translator.
Yeah, I think otherwise wouldn't be here.
She was your diplomat.
Yeah, she was a diplomat.
LT, I want to go back to you. Now, as Gareth mentioned, this is the Asian premiere of the film. What are your plans for it?
I'm trying to find distributors that are interested in distributing this film in the world. So if any of you know any film distributors tonight, please put them in touch with me. I would like to share this film with anyone, really.
And after filming with Michelle for all those months and spending a lot of time with her, do you still think she's the bossy boss? What's your impression of her now?
I think, yeah, absolutely. You can't change that. And I think because of she's bossy and she's confident, she can make a lot of decisions and she wins people. I think she really takes good care of her people. And I think that's very important in running any kind of business. If you don't have that, if you don't have the guts to make certain decisions or do certain things in a certain way, I don't think you have a successful business. I think that's really what I really admire her about.
Yeah. LT, what about you? What else are you planning to do? Because you're an award-winning filmmaker. You've had success as well. What's coming up for you next?
You should talk about your latest. So LT's just premiered a documentary called Shanghai Girls, and she already has won an award in Suzhou for it, and it's just being released in China. It's being released in cinemas, isn't it, in China?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's in the cinemas now. I don't know. When I was making the film, I was the director, but I'm also the producer. So after you finish making the film, you have to think about where does the film go and all the investment, does it come back? So my mind is constantly shifting between how much money I spend, how much money I get in, and who can see it. Yeah, so this new film, Shanghai Girls, it's a documentary about a group of Shanghai girls back in the 1990s. It's all about that era, I think. It's just my thing. They were from a choir group. So in the 90s, they were touring in the country and they were quite famous. And now they're all middle-aged. So it's a story about the city that they grew up with and the life they live now. I'm trying to turn, now that the film is done, I'm trying to turn this into a musical.
Like a stage musical?
A stage musical.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Would they themselves be able to star in it? Maybe. Do they still sing?
They still do. In our premiere, they came on to after the screening. They came on to the front, and like 20 of them, and they sang one of the old songs, All and Sang, that was in the film, and it was really moving. Everyone who was at the premiere cried and laughed, and it was really moving. So musical. That's probably going to be my thing for a while.
Awesome. Well, I hope you can bring the film to
time
Hong
for a
Kong
drink.
too. Okay, we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone. Did I ask them all? No, I could have. Okay, we've got two in the second row here. The mics are coming, yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for an amazing movie. I wanted to know a little bit more about the lady, they said, Amy Tan, I think, introduced her, and she said that was her last month of life.
Tell you later.
Yes. Okay, and second,
Jemana. It was her
Yeah.
dream to go to
How
Shanghai,
you
and
guys
Amy
made it.
said, I will come if you let Kathy come. And we'd been inviting Matt Groening for years to the Literary Festival, and then he just turned up and bought his own ticket, paid for his own hotel, the whole thing himself. He said, no, don't worry about it, it's fine. We were like, fantastic. And he sang with them, and he drew.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And also how you felt about the Australian government's award? Because we don't know anything about this. How did it come about? If you can.
Well, I mean, you know, I had been told beforehand that I was going to get it. The only person I told was my mother, just in case she died before, you know, I got it. I thought I better tell her. I didn't tell anybody else. Yeah, I mean, it was a great recognition. It was, yeah. And at that time, I remember my friend Ted Ma calling and saying, like, you didn't get an AM or an OAM, which are lower standards. You got an AO. I said, yeah, well, why not? You know, he said, but like, I said, what, most women don't get AOs, Dad? Was that it? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great, you know, it's a great recognition. And you're really nominated by, I think you've got to have 5 people. I don't even know the whole process, but I know now I've signed off for other people. You know, and they have to sort of be 5 people with some sort of, you know, public prominence to recommend you. But, you know, I knew all the ambassadors. I knew everybody. I knew all the ambassadors, knew all the consuls general, knew them all.
You fed
Can't
them well.
remember how many I've known. Yeah. Fed them well.
Fed them well.
Looked after them well. Yeah.
A question here from this gentleman.
Michelle, is this working?
Hello, Robert.
Hi. What are you doing now? And I can't imagine you being retired.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm always busy. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I don't know. I feel like I'm running around like a headless chook. But, I mean, really, I think packing up Shanghai is really, I don't know if anybody's ever closed a business, but it's not a slow process.
It's not a fast process?
I mean, it's not a fast, it's a very slow process, thank you. You know, that's taken quite a long time. And I think emotionally it's also taken a long time. I only just packed up the apartment this year. And now I'm back living in Hong Kong. I'm actually sort of looking forward to being back in Hong Kong, really. Although I have just a little house in France, like literally little house. That's, talk about a project, 6 years, still not finished. Easier to build a restaurant in China than to build a small house in a village in France.
Forget it.
Yeah.
It'll be 25 years.
Yeah, exactly. It'll never be finished. Now I'm reconciled to that. But I think, you know, it's quite nice to not have that pressure of worrying about, especially about money, you know, when things are massive bills to pay and, you know, people dependent on you and staff dependent on you, you know. So all the staff are really well placed. They're either retired, yeah, like they're retired and they have a nice time. Alice, who's here, Alice, who was our chief financial officer for years, told me she's retired and she spends all day playing the piano and doing other things and enjoying her life. She said, Michelle, you should try it. Just try enjoying life. It's like, but I do enjoy life. It's great. Yeah. So, I don't know. Is there another project? Maybe. Talking maybe about a festival in France, something tiny in the village. All the people in the village say, who'll come? I say, you'll be surprised.
No more restaurants?
No more restaurants. Forget it.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely 190 billion% positive. No more beep restaurants.
Okay, we have 260 people here who just witnessed you say that.
They got it. And the ones who know me know it.
Any more questions? Oh, there's a question from May.
Michelle, so
May.
I do have lots of questions, but I just wanted to say, you say that you've been very lucky, but I think you've been some lucky, and we've all been so blessed by you.
Oh, that's very kind, May.
So
Thank
my
you.
question,
Thank you.
my question is, how many people do you think you fed?
Oh, Jesus. God, millions. I think at one point when we were trying to put together a deck to think about selling it, I think we worked out that at that point, can anybody remember? Was it 3 million or 5 million?
Oh!
We thought, well, you know, over all of the restaurants in all of the years, I mean, like Hamish Pollitt was talking there were, you know, 1,000 people in a day,
yeah.
covers, and then, I don't know, millions. So hopefully most of them were happy.
So my counter to that is, LT, you think you made a film that showed a part of Michelle's life, but all of us have so many more memories than the millions. So
but I think
multiply
that's the point.
Exactly.
The point
It's so
is that
wonderful.
restaurants are not about, you know, they're not about, I keep saying this, they're not about Michelin stars. I never gave a shit about Michelin stars. I think it's such a sexist system. But having said that, and put it on the record, I think restaurants they're about places, and they're like public dining room. They're like public meeting rooms and public living rooms, and it's where people live one side of their public life, and it might be their family life or their love life or their whatever, they're with their parents or friends or whatever it is. I think that's what restaurants are about, and that's not easy to find. I think we all know it's not easy to find places like that we feel super comfortable. You can go for any reason, and then it's also got to not be so expensive that you can't afford to go there. Actually, I've got a little story finish with. When Cartier were opening on the Bund, that was Bund 18 was opening, the Asia head, a guy called Maxime, his secretary called me and said, Mr. Maxime, I can't even remember his surname, he'd like to meet you. I said, the head of Cartier wants to meet me, why? And she said, he'd like to talk to you. And I said, okay. I thought, I've never stepped foot in a Cartier shop in my life. God knows why. And, it's just, I'm not going to do it. Anyway, he sat me down and we had a nice chat. Actually, he was a great guy. He was married to an Australian psychologist. He was really interesting, and he was really into theatre. So actually, I loved him. I thought he was fantastic. He said to me, Cartier's opening in 6 months. I said, yes, I heard that. And he said, so you are the really driver on the Bund. I said, yeah, okay. He said, so we would like to recommend that you triple your prices.
What?
I said, let me think about it.
What was he going to get out of that?
Well, they wanted, we were too cheap. We were too cheap for the Cartier level. And they wanted he said, you don't seem to understand. The Bund is going to be the Champs-Élysées of, Asia. I was like, that's nice. Even on the Champs-Élysées, there's probably McDonald's, So, I just thought I always felt that it had to be affordable enough that you could go there. And also with the staff, I used to say, don't push people. If there's two young people who come in and they order one starter and they share it, it doesn't matter. They'll grow up and come back and bring their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, there's people here there's lots of people whose kids, of course, I know. And then there's people whose grandkids I know. And then, there's probably another generation by now. So, we've had so many different people over the years. But I think that that's also part of it. It can't be so expensive that you can't afford to go there. Otherwise, you only go for special occasions, and they're awful, mostly.
Yeah.
Most people don't.
Sometimes I just
Valentine's Day, the day we hate more than any day
Valentine's
in the
Day's
year.
The worst, yes.
And it was a day we closed, actually. We tried everything. We did like 3, like you can only book for an odd number of people. We tried everything. we hated Valentine's Day. All sitting there.
Exactly. Obligatory,
Awful.
$500 roses.
Yeah, no, and then some idiots would have like the girlfriend at one thing and the husband at the next. I was like, what are you, nuts?
You've seen it all, haven't you, Michelle?
We've seen it all. We've seen it all. And I learned very quickly to say, yes, we've met. And the wife's saying, we've never met. And I was like, weren't you here last week? No, it wasn't you. Okay. I learned that lesson very early.
So you can be a diplomat, right?
Yeah,
you have to be.
Yeah, I just said nice to see you to everybody. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's
all right.
it. Time for a drink.
We're going to wrap now. So
I want to thank LT because actually she's the one who made it. It was her idea to make a feature-length documentary, and she'll be lucky if she ever makes a penny, I think. Unless, I don't know. But I hope she does. I hope she does, because I'm sure it cost a lot of money. and a lot of time.
Thank you for letting me film you, and then to have this opportunity to share her story with everyone who I think you will feel resonate with however I felt about the whole experience, dining, meeting, having, joining events at such wonderful place. It's just my honor. Thank you.
My honor. Thanks, everybody. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming.
everyone.
And thank you, Asia Society.
On behalf of Asia Society, I want to thank all of you for being here, and especially LT, Michelle, and Karen. I actually have some idea. We're going to recommend this movie to all of our centers. We have 15 centers, and especially to the LA Center, who you might be able to find a distributor. And we also all have two Australia centers, Sydney and Melbourne. So I'm sure if they show it in Asia Society Melbourne, maybe you can also be there, Michelle. I'm sure they would love that. And also New York. I saw in the film a daughter, Brentley Turner. Those of you who know Mary Lee Turner, who was Asia Society, who was my predecessor when this building's idea was being conceived. Her daughter was in it. I took a photo because I'm seeing Mary Lee next week in New York. Because I think New York, Asia Society New York, because this message is more than about the restaurant. It's about Michelle, but also there is hints about connections. And I think that's what I took away, because you were the connector and the restaurant, and also not just already M on the Fringe, but also M on the Bun. And also, I remember first time I met you in person, 2008. I took a New York Times reporter it was for the Olympics, and you entertained us. You took us out to a lovely Peking duck dinner, lunch, I believe, or dinner. I can't remember. But it was, I think it was David Brooks with his daughter who loved pandas, and you entertained us. You were such a diplomat, and so I forgot all about that and while watching it. So again, thank all three of you. And LT, you need to come back, because another reason I'm staying here tonight is because I would like to show The Six. I don't know if how many of you heard about LT's other movie, The Six? Yes, please. But The Six, LT, you want to tell us about your other movie? Because I really, really, really want to show it here at Asia Society. Please tell us about that movie.
I was the producer, not the director of that film.
You made it possible, so tell us.
It's called The Six. It's because there were 6 survivors on Chinese survivors on Titanic, and when we heard about it the first time, we didn't know. Although Titanic was so popular and it made the highest box office in the world for a long time, and in China as well, but no one knew that there were 8 Chinese passengers on Titanic, and 6 of them survived. So we followed a writer. He's American. He's obsessed with the Titanic and anything to do with China. So we basically followed him to like different continents and trying to find out why there was no one who heard anything about that. So if you want to watch the film, let's
Well, I'm going to find the time. We're going to host it here. You're going to put us in touch with the people who can make it happen, because those of you who know, I used to run a museum of Chinese and American in New York, and the stories of these untold story. And Michelle, we already know her story, and you captured it very, very well, lovely. And so again, congratulations. And I'm sure Michelle will be back after the loop, but in the meantime,
Maybe not.
Thank you all. Thank you all. It's so great to see all of you tonight, and I look forward to welcoming you back at Asia Society in Hong Kong. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.